right, hello and welcome. I'm so glad you're here. Today's topic is winning interview techniques for stressed out job seekers. I am Carrie Weaver and I am part of the Wise Her, now Get Wise organization as a career clarity guru and interview ninja. I teach winning interview techniques to stressed out job seekers who really struggle to convey their true value during an interview. And I do that by synthesizing all the best tools and techniques and then relaying them into actionable strategies, several of which you'll get today. And as a result, 4 out of 5 of my interview coaching clients receive a job offer from their very next interview engagement. I hope that sounds great because we're going to get into it today. We're actually going to start off with a little bit of a dismal statistic, and that is that 30% of interviewers make their decision about you as a candidate in the first 5 minutes of your interview. And if you're not presenting yourself as a best fit candidate, somebody else is. So what I really want the moral of this webinar training for you to be, the big takeaway I'll tell you right at the beginning, is the amount of preparation that you put into your interview process and really your whole job search process is often the difference between getting an offer and not. And again, I'm going to give you a bunch of fantastic strategies to really help present you as that winning candidate. So like a standardized test preparation course, which you may have taken if you've gone to graduate school, like the GRE or the GMAT, if you were to take a course that really teaches you how to take the test, this training is actually doing the same thing. It's teaching you how to interview so that you can be seen as a best fit candidate because you have great experience and education and credentials already, and you're smart and talented. It's really just about displaying that confidently so someone else receives you as such. This workshop does assume that you have the requisite knowledge, skill, and ability to do the job you're applying for. You can't fake that. So if, for instance, you're a finance professional who wants to make a career pivot into marketing, it's unlikely that you'd be able to do that in an interview and make a switch right from one field to the next, right? This is really about teaching you how to perform your best in an interview that you're qualified for. And chances are, if you have an interview lined up, someone has read your resume and they already believe you to be a qualified candidate for the role. So just keep that in mind. This isn't going to be about career clarity or career pivoting. It's really about interview mastery for today. So the learning objectives. By the end of the workshop, and make sure you stick with me all the way through, it's a little bit less than an hour's worth of content, but you'll learn how to show up in your interview with full confidence, develop a value proposition statement, which is how you stand out from any other candidate that's interviewing for the job. And you'll also learn how to structure the perfect interview response. All right. So a little bit more about me. I just want you to know that I am fully credentialed in this space. I'm currently the CEO. I'm an executive coach and master trainer at my own company, Silver Branch Consulting. We're a boutique leadership development company that focuses on career clarity and interview mastery, as well as general leadership training. By way of being a chief people officer. So I was a head of HR for many years. I had a 15-year career in HR, dual certified executive coach, an HR professional. I'm certified in a number of behavioral and psychological tools and frameworks. I actually have a 6 Sigma, on and on it goes, to show you that I'm credentialed and an expert in this space. So you're definitely getting truly expert advice as part of your membership to Wiser, now Get Wise. But first, a few secrets from having been on that side of the table when I was interviewing thousands and thousands of candidates for all of the companies that I was working as a human resources, talent acquisition, HR professional. The first secret is your hiring manager, the one who is not an HR professional, is also nervous and uncomfortable. And guess what? They don't interview people every single day, all day long, like recruiters do. It's not their core go-to skill that they have to do. And they're really aware that you're also nervous and they're worried about their nervousness making you nervous. And in some ways, I think it's kind of comforting to know that two people are kind of entering an awkward conversation together. It gives a sense of normalcy that even though this is a little strange and uncomfortable and awkward to have to sell yourself and talk about all your career accomplishments, they're also a little nervous about wanting to really get it right and make you feel as comfortable as possible. The second secret that I'll tell you is they are hoping beyond hope that you're going to do well, that you're the one, that they can stop this interview process and they don't have to talk to any more candidates and they can hire you. So they're actually rooting for you. And I think that that's also incredibly empowering. So just know that those are two things that are really happening from the hiring manager's perspective. The first kind of mini module, though, that we're going to get into today is all about interview confidence. And the three topics that I talked about, confidence, displaying your true value, and structuring the perfect interview response, are really the three things that my clients come to me over and over for help with. And it all starts with interview confidence. What I can tell you is job candidates from interns to board members, and I've helped everybody in between and at both of those end members. You're all up in your head, having all the thoughts about all the things. And what do I mean by that? Here's some of what this sounds like. I have to talk about myself. Am I coming across as too arrogant? Am I making enough eye contact? And how do I do that through technology these days? Do I look at the dot in the computer? Where am I looking? Are my examples even relevant? Do I have enough experience? Am I being stiff? What's happening with my body? Am I using my hands too much? Wait, I actually haven't done that exact thing for the job. Are they going to find me out? All of it. All the candidates are thinking these thoughts. So if you've ever thought anything like this, and even then some, congratulations, you're a human being who's nervous about interviewing. Everyone feels this way. It's totally normal. The first thing I want you to realize is this interview is not actually about you. It's about them. What do I mean by that? Because you're saying, well, Carrie, isn't this interview about me? I have to sit there and talk about how my experience is relevant to the job posting and everything that I've done and all of the impact that I've made. Yes, that's true. You are going to be talking about yourself. Of course you are. It's a job interview. But the reason why the position is open in the first place is a problem for the company. Imagine this. A company like a consumer packaged goods company that has to ship their most popular item is running into supply chain issues. We saw this a lot during the global pandemic. And all of a sudden, they have back orders and their customers are starting to get cranky. They have someone who's left their operations and supply chain role, and that's part of the reason why things have derailed. That's a problem. That's a problem for the company because maybe now their share price is starting to be affected. Negative customer reviews are coming in. Again, that's a real significant problem. If you're there as the candidate to interview for the open supply chain role, yes, again, you're going to be talking about you and your experience, but you want to be able to present yourself as the solution to the problem. So when we shift into a mental space of being of service to helping someone solve a problem, it actually shifts us out of our own ego, which is the thing that's keeping us self-important. And it allows us to step into greater confidence. So one of the confidence shifting techniques that I would advise you to start to deploy is first state your name, Carrie. Your brain kind of goes, why did I just say my name? Who's the me and who's the I? And it creates a little bit of brain confusion. This shifts the part of your brain from the defensive mode where you're concerned about this, am I going to say all the right things, all of those thought bubbles that we just talked about, and shifts you more into an expansive problem-solving approach. And when you do that, you can then secondly say a phrase, a mental reset. This company can benefit from the experiences that I'm about to share. So you state your name, Carrie. That creates the mental confusion. And then give yourself an expansive, positive mindset orientation. This company can benefit from the experiences I'm about to share. And the reason why your brain believes that is because it's true. They can benefit from the experiences that you've had. Oftentimes in an interview, when you take a consultative approach and ask, what's the biggest problem that your company is facing as it relates to this role? They'll often tell you because they want to make sure that you can solve the problem. And if you draw on your previous experiences and tell them, yeah, I've run into a problem like this before. Here's how I thought about solving it, or here's what we did. Let me tell you a time that we did that before. Now, all of a sudden, you're starting to talk about your career experience directly applicable to solving the problem of the organization in a helpful service-based way. To further underscore this point, I want you to think of a few more service-based thoughts of your own, how you can show up as a helpful party to solving the problem in the interview. And think about it this way too. Think about a topic that you know a lot about. Well, I'll give you an example. Outside of my business of executive coaching, interview coaching, career clarity coaching, I love to flip furniture. I love interior design. I've always loved furniture, and I like to take pieces that are destined for the trash heap and polish them up and make them shine again. And I've been doing this for a long time, and I know a lot about it. And if you were to first name the topic that you get excited and know a lot about, what is that? For me, it would be furniture flipping. Then I want you to list or name a few fun facts about that topic. So I might say things like, you want to make sure that you sand all of your wood pieces down with the appropriate sanding grit, or you're going to have big scratches and big problems. I might also talk about how it's really important to prime before you paint so that your paint adheres and doesn't chip off. I could go on, and you actually start to see me get excited about it. Well, what's going on here? If you had to think about ranking on a scale of 1 to 5, where 1 is hard and 5 is easy, how easy is it for you to talk about this topic that you just named, your fun topic? Generally, most people say it's easy. And that's because showing up in full confidence is directly related to how much you know or prepare. When you know a lot about something, it's easy and delightful for you to talk about it. Yet, when we think of the interview context, most of us don't interview all day, every day. We're uncomfortable talking about our own career experiences because we don't do it that often. So of course, it's going to feel kind of wonky and uncomfortable. And then we get in all of our heads and have all of those thoughts that aren't serving us. So if you start to remember that you've lived this career experience before, read your own resume, really become a student of your own experience. Enjoy talking about how you've helped solve problems for organizations and teams. That's really going to start to shift how you show up. So we talked about this. The reason why most people stink at interviewing is because they don't do it that often. And talking about your accomplishments in this very specific way is uncomfortable. So again, it comes down to preparation, preparation, preparation. But don't cram. Cramming was so freshman year of college. You really need to start preparing over many months. Yes, I said it, months, even well before you're ready to find your next job. Now, if you're watching this because you have an interview tomorrow or next week, that's also okay. You're going to get some great information on how to best set yourself up for success. But the very best job-seeking candidates take their time and are really thoughtful about the type of job that would motivate and spark their best performance. They seek out that job through careful planning and networking. And then they're ultimately very prepared to have those interview conversations because they've been a student of their experience. They've prepared a value proposition statement. They have their ICEA matrix all queued up. You'll learn what that is in a moment, and they're ready to go. Okay, so that's what we're going to learn. Again, start preparing well before you even need to look for your new job. So let's start to get into this value proposition statement. What does that even mean? Well, a value proposition is the essence of what you do uniquely well that also benefits your employer. And it could be your subject matter expertise. You might be an accountant or an HR professional or a civil engineer. Again, you're trained and have expertise on something, but quite often Your true value is the way that your brain works and thinks, and how you think about things differently than other people, the way that you solve problems creatively or bring in a collaborative style, your people skills. It's all the intangible things. So where do we start with this? Well, let me give you an example again of mine. You already heard me say this at the top of the hour. I teach winning interview techniques to stressed out job seekers who struggle to convey their value to a future employer by synthesizing the best tools and relaying them into actionable strategies. 4 out of 5 of my clients land job offers from their very next interview engagement. That's pretty great, right? It's great because it's clear what I do. It's clear how I can help people, what problem they have, and how I'm the solution. That's a winning value proposition statement. So let's talk about how to create that. Now, if you don't have one, you can pause the workshop and grab a writing instrument and pen and paper. It would be really helpful. You can also pull up the notes section of your device and take a few notes. Because creating a value proposition statement is really a combination of 2 things that your brain is naturally already wired to do. And that is your mental skills, which is how your brain takes in information by creating, organizing, and deciding. And it's also how you translate what's ultimately in your head out into the world of other people. Those are your interpersonal skills. So your value proposition is some sort of combination of mental and interpersonal skills. So you may be wondering, well, how do I build that into a fancy statement? And I'm going to give you the formula. But first, you need to pick, what are you really good at doing? So first, I like to offer a list of mental skills. Now, this is not exhaustive of all the possible things that your brain is capable of doing, but it's a fairly comprehensive list, and most people are capable of doing all of these things, but not with equal comfort, ease, or joy. Yes, I said joy. And here's the thing about our skills. We can get strong and skillful at doing something through repetition, because the more we do something often, the better we become at it. But when we layer in a desire, a motivation, a joy, an interest that's sparked, we have an increased output to alignment, really wanting to do that thing. And we're more likely to do things we want to do than dread to do. So when you're looking at this list of 15 mental skills, I want you to think about the things, not just that you're good at doing, but that the things that you're good at doing and really enjoy to do. So let's take a quick look at some of these. First one is gathering information by researching. My husband is a great researcher. He loves to dive down and read articles. It's not one of my strong skills. I like to dive right in and try something. That's how I learn best. But there's all sorts of things on here, right? Like designing new systems, imagining and creating new ideas. That's a skill of mine. That's a strength. And I've been told by other people, Carrie, you're so creative. Maybe no wonder that what I like to do for a hobby and an interest is creative pursuits like interior design and furniture flipping. So that's another big indicator for you, is to think about what you like to do outside of work, because often it points you towards a strength or a skill. So again, here's a number of things: computing, analyzing, organizing, classifying, planning and step-by-step process versus planning through big picture action items, synthesizing parts into a whole. That's another thing that I'm really talented at. Problem solving by seeing the big picture, making informed recommendations, evaluating, deciding, managing projects. And the reason why managing projects is a mental skill rather than an interpersonal skill, yes, you have to manage projects out in the world of people, but the mental resources that it takes to think about the strategy of how you're going to manage the projects and the steps and the process and staying organized, that largely happens in the brain first before it's relayed to people. So what I want you to do, well, we'll come back to selecting, but let me just go through the list of interpersonal skills. So again, this is what happens in the brain eventually has to come out and be in the world with people, right? So anything that's communicated, verbal or written. Some people are really good at resolving conflict, leading or motivating others, managing and supervising people, negotiating win-win arrangements. That's a huge one. That's so valuable. And I don't know that I'm super good at that, but when I see other people do it, I'm always really impressed. Advising, coaching, and mentoring, referring and connecting people. Again, when I see connectors who just know everybody and connect people, I'm so impressed because it's not something that comes natural to me. Yet, I'm really good at assessing and evaluating individuals because I've been an interviewer for 20 years, right? So again, on and on the list goes. You can read them, and you can also pause the session as you need to really tap into the ones that you enjoy the most. So the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to start by picking 4 mental and 4 interpersonal skills. So I've got them now on one screen. The first thing that I'm going to do is go through the mental list and say, you know what, for me, I really love to think imaginatively, creatively. So I'm going to select that one. I'm really good at problem solving by seeing patterns. On interpersonal skills, I'm really good at assessing and evaluating people. As we talked about coaching, I'm a coach, so I'm good at that as well. Planning through big picture action items, I've kind of gone back and forth because you may have to really, one may help you think about the other. So for instance, I like to plan big picture action items for the people that I'm coaching. So again, you can weave back and forth through these, but pick 4 in each column. So I've got my 4 on the screen just as an example. The last thing that I picked is teaching and training because that's a lot of what I do. I coach people one-on-one, but then when I have large groups of people or networks, just like Get Wise, I teach thousands of people at the same time. So I have to be able to deploy a different style or technique. So great, enough about me. You've got your 4 mental skills and 4 interpersonal skills. The next step, you're going to have to pick, reduce from 4 to 2 apiece. So I really want you to think again about not just what you're good at, things that you've been told that you're good at that validate, yes, in fact, you're good at this. Think about feedback that you've gotten from an existing coworker, supervisor or manager, even family and friends. They know what you're good at. They've been around you a lot of your life. So make sure you get the validation that what you think you're good at is what you're actually good at. And make sure it's something that you genuinely enjoy doing. You're going to reduce it to 2 apiece. So for me, it was hard to pick, but I've got plus signs by the ones that I like the most. Number 3 and number 12. And on one side for mental skills and interpersonal skills, I've got really representing and presenting ideas and teaching. First, I have to present the idea really to teach. Kind of makes sense, right? Oh, sorry, I still had some animations on the screen. So we'll just click through those. Then the next thing that you're going to do is you're going to combine 1 to 2. That's it. Mental skills with 1 to 2 interpersonal skills. And then build the statement using the formula that you're about to see next. So for me, when I look back at the previous list that I had checked and made plus marks, which I invite you to do something similar, the words that really popped out at me or resonated with me the most are teaching and coaching. And that's a great fit for me because that's what I do. Sometimes it's not what your job is. It happens to be what my job is. I am a teacher and a coach, but I wasn't always that. I've had to work a lot of my career over 25 years to really get into the space that's truly leveraging my talents. So if that's the case for you, great. If you're in a job doing the thing that you love to do, but it doesn't always match, and that's okay. You might be an electrical engineer who's really good at computing or solving problems with numbers. That might be applicable to your job, but you also might be really good at representing and presenting ideas like me. So sometimes there's not a super direct correlation. Again, that's okay. What you want to do is you want to tease out the words or the phrases that most appeal and capture who you really are when you're working at your best. What are the skills and attributes that you're deploying? So again, for me, it's synthesizing information, presenting ideas, really as actionable strategies. All right. So here's the formula. Here's what I've already said to you now twice. And I've got in the bits of the formula that make this statement come to life. So you're going to basically start with an I statement. So you're going to say, a skill. For me, it's teach. I teach. Well, what is it that I teach? I need some sort of a descriptor. Well, I teach winning interview techniques. Okay. There's got to be some sort of a connection word to, what, for, at, etc. Who or what do you do this for? Well, I teach winning interview techniques for a who that happen to be stressed out job seekers. Now, the next thing you want to do in your value proposition statement is state the problem. And you want to do it as concisely as you can. The very best value proposition statements do that. They name a problem and how you're the result or the solution to that problem by use of a few skills, right? So the problem is the stressed out job seekers are struggling to convey what their true value is to a future employer. And that's a problem because you're not going to get a job offer if you can't convey why you're the winning candidate. So how do I do that? Well, I take a lot of tools and frameworks. I read all the articles, watch all the TED Talks and listen to the podcasts and all of it. And I take the very best strategies and relay them into actionable, practical tools. And when I do that, people learn it and they take it and deploy it, and then they're able to get the job offer. That's the result. So this is a very meta example, and that I'm teaching you how to make a value proposition statement. And my value proposition statement is about the thing that I do. Kind of cool, right? So let's look at the formula for another example. This is someone that I worked with who designs systems. You can already start to see, imagine these kind of formula phrases as we're reading this next one. So what's the skill? What's a descriptor sentence for who or what? What's the problem? What are the few skills that lend to a result? Again, let's read it. I design systems for scaling businesses who lack in-house operations support. By listening to client needs and optimizing custom solutions, I ensure companies have the right data to become profitable earlier in their journey. Wow, that's really clear. It's concise, it's simple, it's elegant. This is a winning value proposition statement. So let's just look at the formula. I wanted to show you the examples first, because if I just showed you this, it kind of looks like Greek on a page. Like, what is this, Carrie? What are you telling us? So again, you're going to start with I, because it's about you in this case. What skill do you do the most day in and day out? What's the needed descriptor phrase? So we have context and understand what you're talking about. There's probably some sort of connection word. And then for who or what do you do this for? What's the problem that they have? And then by using which few skills, it doesn't matter if they're mental or interpersonal, what result do you deliver? That's the formula for creating a winning value proposition statement. So your homework after watching the workshop is to workshop this. Start to build in these pieces. And what I can tell you is, over the many years that I've been helping clients create these statements, a couple problems arise. They try to cram in all the skills and all the words because they're good at, you're smart and talented, you're good at lots of things, but you really want to try to distill it down, because the more simple, concise, and clear with almost common language, forget the jargon for your industry, just make it really simple. Those are the winning value proposition statements, all right? So when to use your value proposition. In an interview, they're going to ask you all sorts of questions. And there's some very specific questions when you'll use this value proposition statement. They may ask, so Carrie, why are you a good fit for this role or this company? And I might say, well, I'm a good fit to work at GetWise because I help teach interview techniques to stressed out job seekers. So you can, massage the first few words that you say of the sentence to lead yourself into the value proposition. They might ask you, what are your strengths? Carrie, what would you say your strengths are? Well, I'm good at teaching winning interview techniques by synthesizing all sorts of information and relaying them into actionable strategies. See, I just took a few portions of my value proposition statement there, but use the mental and interpersonal skills list to draw that out. When they ask, why should we hire you? This is really when to use the value proposition statement. This is what differentiates you and what you do uniquely well from any other candidate. And then why do you want this job? You might say something like, well, I teach winning interview techniques to stressed out job seekers who struggle to convey their true value. And I really believe in doing that for an organization like Get Wise, because I believe in mentoring women and people of color, junior people, people who don't have as many opportunities. What I'm doing here is I'm actually adding in elements of the organization that I'm talking about, combining it with my value proposition statement. So you want to add that passion point for why the company, but you're still going to talk about your skills through the lens of your value proposition statement. Okay. So there's lots of instances where you can use it and, quite honestly, repeat it during an interview. The very best thing that can happen in your interview is at the end, your interviewer gets up and walks away and they can repeat your value proposition. They understand who you are, what you can do for them, what problem you solve for them. That's exciting. So I really hope that you're excited about building your value proposition statement. It's oftentimes the thing that really helps my clients get the job offer. So we have to shift next into talking about all the other answers that you're going to give. And this is the perfectly structured interview response. I'm first going to tell you that it is not the SAR or the STAR method. If you go on the internet and you Google how to respond to an interview, unfortunately, you're going to get a lot of this. The STAR method: situation, task, action, and result. I'm going to actually show you why it doesn't work. Here's the STAR model example. Your interviewer might ask, "Hey, Carrie, tell me about a time when you developed an innovative solution." If I was using the STAR model, I might say something like this paragraph, and I'll just read it. Well, my organization was looking for a way to reduce company costs, and my HR department was tasked with finding as much savings as possible. And we even considered headcount reductions, which are never fun. And we knew we had a low benefit claim amount. And the thought of examining a switch to a self-funded plan versus a fully insured plan made sense. And so my team underwent this blah, 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 like on and on and on. The reason why I've lost my interviewer, and I've probably lost all of your time and attention, is because I've spent too much time explaining the situation before I actually talk about the result, the action that I took and the result. So that in the STAR model, that's all the way at the end, was when we looked at switching the benefits, it resulted in $1 million savings. Well, wait, that's so important. We should have shifted that and put that up front. So this is why the STAR model is not actually very effective at all. So don't Google the STAR model. I'm going to teach you something totally different. The perfectly structured interview response is the model that I created. I actually have it trademarked. It's called the ICEA model. And it's because you want your interviewer to see you as the best fit candidate. And it's also an acronym, and we'll get that in a moment right here. The ICEA model stands for impact. What did you do that made a difference? What was the result of your effort, of your initiative, of the project, of whatever? Then give the context for why it was important, why it mattered. Then you want to state the why stands for your role. I cannot tell you how many times as an interviewer, someone gave a response, some good, some bad, but at the end, I always had to ask, what was your role in all of that? You don't want your interviewer to have to wonder what you specifically did or not. And then you want to talk about any action steps. You want to be brief and concise, but you want to state thoroughly what was done. So let's rework this example. So in the ICEA model, if someone asked me, Carrie, tell me about a time you developed an innovative solution. Using the ICEA model, I would say, I saved my company $1 million in 1 year by shifting to a fully insured benefits plan. I could, period, stop talking there. And they would go, wow, that you couldn't possibly have done that unless you weren't innovative. Tell me more. I would guide you to give the full context of the answer by saying the reason this was innovative was that we needed to reduce overhead costs, but not at the expense of employee morale. After all, an engaged workforce will deliver on a company's mission. That sentence gave the context for why it was important to think innovatively to keep the employees happy. Now I'm going to say my role, even if it's 2 words. I led That was my role. I led a small team of HR and finance professionals. That was my role in this. And this was something I really did, by the way, in my HR career. And so I led a small team of HR professionals in a hands-on research and analysis process that required executive approval prior to implementation. The process took several months and included multi-stakeholder buy-in, a change management roadmap, and different departments working together to ultimately execute the project. The best part was our employee benefits looked and operated identical, and we secured massive savings. That's innovative. And I was able to show and start with impact up front. That's why the ICEA model works so much better than the STAR model. So how do you start to flesh this out? You want to start to queue up what I call an ICEA matrix. You want to create this ideally in Excel or Word or somewhere that you can create a table. So you want to start to list in one column all your significant projects and initiatives. And this is where it takes a moment to go, like, what have I worked on in my career? But do this, even if it's, you've just interned or you've done volunteer work, or all the way up to, again, I help people get into board seats at publicly traded companies. You want to list these really significant initiatives that you've worked on in your career. So I've got an example here. There was a WIN project. The WIN was an acronym. It stood for it was Women's Inclusive Network, but it was a women's leadership development program. And that was the project's name. And the impact was that from that program, in the organization that I was working on this with the head of diversity, inclusiveness, and belonging, we were able to change the representation of women at the senior level at that company from 25% women represented in roles to 45% over a year's time. That is significant. That's impact. Now, what's the context? Well, the organization that I was working in really was trying to link DEI to organizational performance, and why diversity and inclusiveness and equity and belonging was going to yield better business results. We know that it does, but they wanted to see and feel that in real time. So then we have to talk about what was my role. Well, I actually thought up the program name. I supported the DEI lead in developing the program. I delivered some of the training, and then I actually coached each of the individuals who were in the program. So I had a significant role. And then I would want to talk about the action steps. So you can see I've built this table out just with some bullet points for the significant initiative. You don't have to write this out yet in sentences. You can, but I would guide you away from that, because when you're in a pressure situation, remember, we do shift a little bit to our defensive zone, and we want to do some of our mindset and confidence strategies to be of service and think about helpfulness, and that will help shift us. But we don't want to put ourselves in a position where we feel like we have to memorize a response, because if we trip up on a word, then we'll start to unravel and go, oh, shoot, I said the wrong word and I meant to say this, and it can actually trip you up. So my advice is not to try to write out small paragraphs and memorize them, but just to get really comfortable with this framework. So when someone asks you about a time you've been innovative, or a time that you had to navigate a difficult conversation, think about, again, what is the opportunity about, what is the role about, and what would be important skills to have in supporting that role. Oftentimes the job description will tell you what those things are. That's how you want to build out this matrix with, a time that you've had to hire someone, or maybe unfortunately fire someone, a time that you've been collaborative, innovative, had a difficult conversation, and you want to queue up an example in your professional career when you've done those things in this way with the ICEA structure in mind. And the reason why we do this is because any listener will stop listening within 7 seconds, 7 seconds, if what you're saying doesn't resonate with them, if they're not hearing the answer to the question that they asked. See, most people go into an interview thinking they're going to, share information about their career and their experiences and have a chit chat. And while you do that, it's unlike any other conversation you've had, because your interviewer is listening with the context really of right or wrong. Is what Carrie is saying relevant to the role that I have open, yes or no? When you and I are just engaged at the park in a conversation about, your hobbies. I'm not thinking, is that right or wrong? Because I don't have the context of, do I need to be doing this hobby? Yes or no? No, we're just having a conversation at the park about your interests. But in an interview, it's totally different. Your interviewer wants to know if what you're saying is relevant and applicable to solving the problem for the role. So you have to have this stuff queued up in a very specific way, stating the impact of your result first, so they hear your value right away. All right. But wait, we need to put a pin in all of this, because we also need greater context for why and when we use the ICEA structure, not the STAR model. Remember, go home and tell all your friends and colleagues and family members when you're interviewing, don't use the STAR model, use the ICEA model. The other thing that you need to do is make sure that you're framing up your whole interview to be seen as the best fit candidate. And I've talked about this a little bit already during the workshop, but best fit candidates think of the open position as the company's problem and themselves as the solution. When you can present yourself as the solution to the problem, it's really hard for them not to offer you the job. Remember when we talked about the supply chain issue and your favorite product isn't being delivered on time and you're starting to write cranky reviews? Imagine that you're that operations supply chain specialist and someone asks you, why are you the best fit for this role? If you were to say something like, well, I'm an effective team leader and I'm really good at mentoring junior staff to the point where my track record is 60% of my staff gets a promotion after their first year. Well, that's impressive. You're a good leader, and that's a useful, helpful thing. We need good leaders in companies, and certainly in significant roles like a head of supply chain. But would it be as valuable as this response? As a supply chain leader, my brain works best when I see problems to be solved. I'm good at finding kinks in the chain and understanding what are the solutions that will help unravel and unwind the kink. Like now I'm directly talking about how I'm the solution to the problem. And I want to give an example of how I've done that before. But while being a good leader is important, no one would argue that it isn't, it's not actually speaking to the language of the problem for why the role is open in the first place. So you first want to ask yourself, what are the top 3 skills that would be the greatest advantage in solving the problem? That's the open position. Sometimes the job description will tell you very plainly in words. The other good thing to do is ask the recruiter or whoever you have that initial conversation with, hey, what would you say is the biggest challenge that this role is facing? See if they'll tell you. Then you want to list out what those top skills would be and compare them to the things that you've listed in your ICEA matrix and in your value proposition statement. Again, if everyone that I meet at GetWise is an expert interviewer, then me coming in teaching winning interview strategies is not as valuable as maybe it is teaching my other leadership development skills. Maybe you all have a need to be able to give more effective feedback. Well, that's also something I do. But if I am framing not the solution to the problem, it's not going to be valuable, right? So you again want to make sure that, look, you're talented at lots of things. You want to make sure the things that you're conveying in the interview are the most applicable to the problem that exists for the open role. So you want to rework your ICEA matrix or your value proposition as needed to speak to the solution to the problem. All right. So when not to use that ICEA framework is first, when you're delivering your value proposition statement, you're just going to say it, as I've demonstrated a few different times. Then when you're answering often what is their first question, that often sounds something like, tell me about yourself, give me your career highlights, give me an overview of your resume, what have you done in your career to date? For this question, you're going to go through a linear storytelling approach, but you're going to start with your most recent job, not chronological order. I actually, and it's not something that I put on my my profile because it's irrelevant at this point, having been in my career for 25 years. I actually have a master's degree in geological sciences. I was a geologist of all things. I used to study groundwater contamination and meteorites and all sort of really cool things. And while I think my science mind helps me solve people problems in a new and different way, which is a competitive edge, and I talk about that often in interviews, it's not where I'd want to start when someone asks, hey, Carrie, tell me about a time where or tell me about your career history as it relates to a position. Let's say I'm interviewing for a company who wants to develop a leadership program, of which I've done a lot of that recently. Why would I start back 20 years ago when I was a geologist? That doesn't make any sense. So a lot of people fail to do that in the right order being most recent to, or most applicable, I'll call it. If for some reason you started your career as a geologist, then you were an HR professional and executive coach, and all of a sudden you wanted to go back to being a geologist, you might want to start in reverse order. So you want to start in the order that's most applicable. Chances are it's what you've been doing most recently. And then you want to kind of walk them through your experience, calling out impact that you've made in each of your role, just a sentence or two. All right. Let's check in with what we've learned as we're nearing the end of the workshop. So we talked about really showing up in a space of confidence by shifting into a space of service, and then being prepared. When we're prepared and we know what we're talking about, just like the fun facts and the topic that we know a lot about, preparation is everything. We will feel confident when we have prepared, when we have a value proposition statement nailed down, when you've got your ICEA matrix and all of your examples pulled up and you know what the impact that you made for each of those initiatives was. Like when you've done the work, you can go in there and feel really prepared and confident. So those are the two big things: shift to a place of service and do the work in preparation. The second thing we talked about is how to craft your value proposition statement and when to use it. And we gave you the formula, talked about your mental skills and your interpersonal skills, and really, again, how those skills are the solution to the problem. That's the biggest key that I can give you, is presenting yourself as the solution to the problem. I also gave you how to perfectly structure your interview response using the ICEA model, and a few specific instances when not to use the ICEA model, which I feel like, did I actually give you that? Let me go back. I didn't give you that. So when not to use the ICEA model, oh, I did. I'm sorry. So when delivering your value proposition statement, and then when they ask you about your kind of career experience, you want to give that linear storytelling approach. I would also say there's actually even one more, which is if they give you a very specific direction about how to answer a question. As an example, Carrie, give me 3 to 5 attributes that you love about your personality the most. I don't know that they'd ever ask me that in an interview, but I want to answer the question that they asked. That's one of the most important things that you can do. So I might say, and you can even repeat it, 3 to 5 attributes about my personality that I like best are that I'm hardworking, creative, motivated, collaborative, and positive. I've given them exactly what they asked for. In an interview, they're often also listening for subtext. Can the candidate listen and follow instruction? Because they want to make sure that you're a conscientious and reliable worker. And if they ask a question and you go off in a whole different direction, they might sense like a rebel tendency to not listen or to disregard instruction, and that's not a good look. So that's another really specific winning strategy, is to, even though I've given you the ICEA model and that's what you're going to use the most often, still, if they ask you a question in a very specific way for a very specific delivery style, do what they ask. Okay. All right. So we talked about how to frame the whole interview, again, as the problem solution approach. That's really like the super winning strategy that I think cracks things wide open for most people. And you'd be surprised how many people actually get that wrong. I was working with a client and I asked her, Carolyn, what is the problem that this role has? And she said, well, they don't have a cohesive brand narrative. This was for a marketing role. And I said, well, having a cohesive brand narrative is the solution. What is the problem? And she went, oh, I don't know. Okay, let me think about that. And then we were able to unpack that with customers, there's confusion because there's not a cohesive narrative. And so they're not staying on the platform long enough to make a purchase. Revenue is down. Revenue is down is the problem. Customer confusion is a problem that results in low revenues or low market share. So having a consistent brand narrative across all the products and services will give customers clarity and then allow them to know the brand and be engaged with that brand if they so choose. So sometimes people think the solution is the problem. You have to try to back that out a little bit more. Anyway, more that we could talk about. But there's actually so much that we didn't learn. So the first slide of things that you didn't learn, there are 25 of the most common interview questions and absolutely 3 that you need to nail. How to use unconscious bias to your advantage. Interviews are chock full of bias, unfortunately to candidates' advantage, but you can do some ninja tricks to help it work to your advantage. Using the science of your own personality to your advantage, body language, especially what not to do. And the real starting point is how to kind of create that roadmap to land the position that you really want. So often we take a passive approach to finding the job that we want by just applying online to something that's available, when really I would argue you should shop for the job that you want and do a networking strategy through informational interviews, and then how to set up your LinkedIn profile so that you get found by recruiters. And then the real, I call the $250,000 question, is the job that you're interviewing for really the one that you want? Does it spark the biggest joy? So there's so much that we didn't get to, but the reason why I'm telling you all the things that we didn't get to is because you're part of this amazing network that allows you to tap into experts like me, and you can book a call if you would like. So I would be honored if you did that. I would also love that if you go to LinkedIn, go to my LinkedIn profile, find Carrie Weaver, Silver Branch Consulting is the name of my company, and connect with me. Say, hey, I watched your workshop. Here's what I loved, here's what I didn't, here's what I need clarity on, but certainly do book a call. I would be delighted to speak with you on anything that we talked about and even things that we didn't. I hope that you have a wonderful rest of your day. Take care.